Spacefair. What the UFO? Hi everybody, I'm Caleb. This is 2025's Christmas edition. I'm recording this on Christmas for some reason, alone in my studio after a lovely day with my family. I hope you've had a healthy, happy, warm, and celebratory end of the year with your loved ones, celebrating whatever you care about, even if it's just each other or the wonder of life. I'm going to do a fun one today. This is going to be just what I think is happening with UFOs, just the straight up guess of the whole picture. I feel like that's a good year ender. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and just say what I think is going on. And I'm not going to hedge too much, but I am going to set the table just briefly at the beginning with a little intellectual preamble. And I first briefly want to say thank you to everyone who supports the show on patreon.com/WTUFO. Makes a huge difference. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your support. Everybody else, I could totally use it, like $1 a month. If you can afford 1/3 of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support the show. That's all. That's my whole pitch. Please support the show at WTUFO on Patreon. Okay, preamble to what do I think about UFOs. This is not going to be a careful, bit-by-bit probability analysis of all the pieces of UFO lore. I'm not going to go thing by thing and say which I think is most likely and least likely. That I think has a really important place. And I think in sort of a TED Talk future, maybe speechy version of this thing that I'm going to lay out, I would divide these probabilities by things that are almost certainly true, things that are probably true, things that could be true, and things that maybe could be true but probably aren't, or feel like a bit of a reach, but who knows, might want to keep the door open. This today is just going to be a gut check guesstimate of this situation. So I'm just going to say what I feel is going on. And that's going to mean that some of these things I think are like 80% true. Some of them I maybe would give like a 20% rating if I was given cold hard analysis. But I'm just going with my like stomach level instinct on this. And this is going to be the last time that I hand wave and apologize and disclaim and preamble. Okay, preamble over. Here's what I think is happening with UFOs. Feel free to disagree in the comments. Maybe we'll start a fun conversation. First of all, I think they're mostly aliens. I think we're talking about creatures who came from another planet than Earth. I think they were largely evolved in other places in space, in the galaxy, maybe even elsewhere in the universe. I don't think we're talking primarily about native Earth things. I wouldn't rule out the possibility that some holdovers from an ancient civilization are involved with the UFO phenomenon, but I don't think that's the central drive. I think mostly we're talking about creatures that evolved in other places than Earth, that have been on Earth for quite a long time doing various things. Okay, so thing one, this is the big one. I'm in the extraterrestrial hypothesis camp. I think it's mostly aliens. Okay, thing two, I think there are physical craft and I think there are physical beings involved in this operation. Some of these beings might be sort of biobots, like organic robots of some kind, controlled telepathically by other beings, or I don't know, maybe there's AI involved. It would stand to reason that hyper advanced beings would have some kind of AI the way we not very advanced beings have some kind of AI right now. So physical craft and beings, there are nuts and bolts, there are biologics. I think that's very likely. Those two things I think are quite likely. Then next up, I think, here for a long time. I think probably at least thousands of years, might be in the like tens or even hundreds of thousands of years at some level on the planet. I don't know if they've been doing as much stuff as they are doing now for that whole span of several 100,000 years or longer. I don't think we have any good evidence about anything longer than, say, like 10,000 years, because pre-human history, we just don't know much. And we've never, I don't think, found a fossil of something that seemed technological. So once you get back into the millions of the years, it's just a giant question mark. I don't think we know anything about that. But throughout history, we have plenty of sightings and statements about things that seem really UFO-y. So I think it's reasonable to guess that these creatures have been on Earth interacting with humans for a really long time, like at least the recorded span of human history. And that suggests, just because they've been going for that long, strongly, that they probably started before that. Like there's this rule of thumb about guesstimating how long something will continue to last. And if if it's been going for 50 years, then it's reasonable to guess that it might go for another 50. So if you can apply that sort of retroactively, then if they've been around for 10,000 years and we have evidence of that, then you could maybe guess that they were here for 10,000 years before that. I don't know. That's just a speculation, but that's what we're doing today because this is just fun, juicy speculation. I think they've been here for a long time. I think as a result of that, because they've had to be somewhere, that they must have some bases of operation, like in the planet, underground, underwater, probably nearby in the system, like on the dark side of the moon, or elsewhere in the system. It wouldn't be too hard to hide. I think there are lots of places we don't look or don't get to very frequently, and even the bottom of the ocean, there's a lot of smoke there. There's a lot of reason, I think, to believe that there are underwater bases operating on Earth in some particular places, like in the Bermuda Triangle, maybe, and like off the southwest of California, and a couple other spots that seem likely. But it also seems believable that these bases could move around. So they're probably creating new craft and maybe growing new organs down there and organisms and doing whatever else they like to do at home base. But I think they have home bases underwater, probably on the other side of the moon, maybe elsewhere in the system. Okay, so aliens, physical, with physical craft, been here for a long time, bases underwater. Because they've been here for a long time, and because we have strong evidence that there's some kind of hybridization program just in the last couple decades, that suggests to me, and this is one of the harder, bigger ones for me to swallow, and so maybe it will be hard for everybody to swallow and decide whether it's true for the next couple decades or centuries. I think it's likely they've been tinkering with human beings on a genetic level for a really long time. I think it's likely that these alien creatures have influenced the evolution of the human species. And I'm not saying that that's definitely true or that we have like rock solid evidence that that's happening again. This is a gut shot guess based on the stuff that you hear and read in this space, and just sort of putting some logic puzzles together. Okay, I'm disclaiming. I promise I wouldn't do it, but it's scary. It's rough to say this stuff out loud because it does sound cuckoo bananas. And, someday if I like run for office or try to do something real and somebody picks this video and goes, hey, this guy thinks aliens tinkered with our DNA. Like, what is the value really for me of expressing this opinion? I don't know, but it's Christmas and I'm saying what I want. So I think they probably have engaged in some sort of uplift behavior. And that's coming primarily from direct reports of some people who have talked to beings that have told them similar stuff. Like they have said, we're influencing your trajectory and we've done that. And I don't think that replaces the idea of evolution. I think this is, it's likely just one component, like you go in and you change just a little bit about the cerebellum. Maybe you do some sort of a hybrid program with somebody 50,000 years ago or a couple 100,000 years ago, and you see one of those leaps in human ability. They probably started with pre-human ancestors, if this is real, if this is what they did, and then they gradually worked toward something human. And the other thing this strongly implies is that we might be more directly related to some of these beings than we thought. Like we might be relatives, intentionally manipulated and sort of cultivated relatives, but in a real sense, blood relatives, which is wild. It's hard to get your head around why a group would do this socially, culturally, scientifically. It feels pretty alien to us. But again, that's what I think they are. So teasing that out a little bit into this broader vision, I think this implies that they, whoever these creatures are, and maybe there are multiple groups working in this capacity. Certainly there are multiple groups. It could be that only one of these groups is specifically cultivating humans and trying to evolve them, or it could be that multiple groups have been tinkering with the gene lines in different ways, possibly to different ends and with different materials. My gut instinct, since that's what we're doing, is that one of these species is interested specifically in the uploading project and that they have been kind of in charge of that and leading the charge. But that's not coming from anywhere, really. That's mostly just a guess. But so this implies that we have like a gardening relationship. They've been here for a really long time, and they're in some sense keeping humans like humans keep bees, which is to say they're cultivating us, they're managing our societies, but they're not directly involved in all the little nitty gritty. It's more like they're helping sculpt the circumstances of our lives, of our big picture civilization. And maybe some of the like religious appearances include efforts to do that, like reports of a god giving instructions or appearing to intervene in a key human event. Maybe some of that was deliberate social manipulation or sculpting. You know, I've been thinking a little bit about animal kingdom examples of this, where, say, a bird will lay eggs in the nest of another bird, and then those eggs will push out the original bird's eggs when they hatch or before they hatch. That's a thing that we know happens in nature. There are parasitic relationships in nature where, you know, one life form gets into another life form and kind of changes how it works. And that seems like it could be the kind of thing that's happening here. There's this like organism from elsewhere that has injected itself into the organism of life on Earth, and specifically human life, and it's manipulating it, moving it, using it to its own end. But it also could be that there's like a technological, intellectual project here of cultivating a new sort of species the way we would grow a garden and intentionally shape trees to our liking and prune stuff we don't like and maintain the lawn and choose the right plants. And that seems feasible to me on like a broad galactic plus scale. That's the kind of thing that a really advanced species might be interested in doing, sort of like recreationally, once they've solved all their other problems. As they move out into the universe, they might become interested in planets with lives and then try to sculpt and influence those lives and maybe try to uplift and upgrade the kinds of intellectual abilities on the planet. That all seems, although it's very far out in terms of like the idea that it actually is happening, it seems kind of believable as a trajectory for a super advanced species. So managing, sculpting, and probably controlling intellectual species as kind of like a progeny, sort of like children, but also sort of like pets, but also sort of like a garden, some relationship like that. It's complicated, but potentially quite beautiful in an elevated, advanced civilization kind of way. Leaving this on controlling, I'll pivot to the next thing. I think they are keeping an eye on our capabilities. I think the strong evidence is that these creatures in their craft have been very interested in advanced human military potential. Nearly every facility that has some kind of nuclear component has at some point seen some visitation by UFOs. This goes all the way back to the first nukes. And as you, I'm sure, are well aware and have heard a million times, it's happened at every nuclear installation at many I don't know. I'm not sure if it's been every, but it's been many, many, many nuclear installations, certainly dozens. I would recommend the book UFOs and Nukes by Robert Hastings. It's a slog of a read, but it's filled with data about this. This is not just one or two cases. They are all over the nuclear situation. And that's also true, apparently, of military bases in general. Like, you can go back a few years and see Ryan Graves say, we saw these things every day, some of us, while we were flying. And that suggests strongly that they, whoever they are keeping strong tabs on military capabilities as they evolve. And we're just starting to see more of them. Like, as Graves points out, pre the latest update of the radar in the early thousands, they couldn't see many of these things. And then they turned it on and they could see a bunch of these things. So it could be that we're noticing them more because our sensors are getting better. And we're sort of hitting a tipping point in that regard. And I'll loop back to that at the last point. So gardening, managing, controlling us, nuclear control, military management, I do think that they are interested in making sure that they could intervene if they had to. I don't think they're trying to affect military outcomes currently, but I think they're doing what all human militaries do, which is keep a very close eye on the advanced capabilities of all other major militaries like China and the US, Russia, the Five Eyes, all of the powerful nations of Earth pay really close attention to the military capabilities of all the other powerful nations on Earth. And I think these powerful creatures are almost certainly doing that to humans, partly because they just want to know, and partly probably because they want to make sure that they can control us if they have to. That seems pretty reasonable to me. So I don't have a very clean pivot into this, but this next chunk is something I have to talk about because it comes up when you go down the UFO rabbit hole, and it's a big part of alternate explanations for what's going on. In addition to all the nuts and bolts stuff and all the straight up control stuff and the historical interaction stuff, I think it's likely that there's a whole bunch of stuff we don't yet fully understand about what you could loosely term the spirit world, the spirit aspect of reality. I think it's kind of like UV light in that we can't naturally see it, but it's still physically there. And it's probably related to dark matter and dark energy, the stuff that we are missing in our model of physics. And maybe it relates to some of the aspects we don't understand of quantum physics and how it fails to connect to Newtonian physics. You know, there could be aspects of that gap that relate directly to thousands of years of direct reports of spiritual experiences. So within this umbrella, which is huge, I think other kinds of beings exist, like not aliens, but spirits of human people, maybe spirits of animals. I think it stands to reason that humans and animals both have literal souls. This is not something I thought just a few years ago. So going down the rabbit hole and reading lots of books about psychic and spiritual stuff alongside the UFO stuff, because they do blend together, suggests to me that this stuff is real. I think reincarnation has a really good chance of being real, and that's what makes me think that something like a soul genuinely exists. I think sort of soul agreements are probably real, some kind of like intentional decision when a soul enters the world of life to experience things and to love in a physical form and then to learn things and then go back. A bunch of psi phenomena are real, like precognition, remote viewing. I think these things are definitely real. We don't have perfect explanations of how they work yet. We're still in more of like an engineering phase where we understand that we can apply them, but we can't describe in detail how exactly they work. And that is really exciting science for the next century. But to that point, if you're a species who's had a few thousand or a few million years extra to work on this stuff, it's quite likely that you understand those things more. So you're more comfortable with these spirit realms. You can maybe interact with them. Maybe you can talk to people in them or move in and out of them in ways that seem totally fanciful to us right now, but to an advanced species might be no more fanciful than moving faster than the speed of light, say, by using a warp bubble to literally go through space-time instead of moving in it, carve a little hole out and move space-time around you to get somewhere. Other phenomena in the religious space that are probably true, I think, but we don't necessarily have rock solid evidence for are things that are reported in religion and folklore, like spirit beings that were never human. So angels, demons, jinn, maybe fairies, maybe leprechaun. I'm not sure. There are lots of Hulden folk. There are lots and lots of stories all around the world about mystical creatures. A whole bunch of them might have something to them, like there may be shape-shifting werewolves. There might be something like a vampire. There might be pixies. These things could be real. Pretty decent shot that something like Bigfoot is real and that it's not just a primate that we haven't discovered because they're trixier than that. They seem to disappear more easily than that. That seems like a cryptid that has access to the spirit realm that we don't necessarily understand. Possible. Again, I'm not making any claims right now about the high or low probability of this stuff. I'm just saying gut check. This is what I think. I think this stuff is real, but I'm not trying to pitch you on it being 80, 90% real. It's just this feels right to me. We'll do a more detailed nerdy analysis another time. I'm sorry. I know I promised I would not disclaim, and I'm just continuing to disclaim because this is thorny stuff, but I am giving you the real juice of what I actually think, and I hope you're enjoying it. It's one more layer of the spirit stuff I think is really interesting is this idea from, I think, David Gladstone on this channel, that there's some kind of spirit internet that these beings use, like in the same way that we can send data over Wi-Fi and our internet. It seems reasonable to imagine that advanced beings who can interact with the spiritual reality might be able to technologically utilize it to send and share information, or maybe even move physically through reality. So David has this really interesting idea about a spirit internet that's built out of the souls of the ancestors of these advanced beings. Fascinating concept. No idea if it's real, but it does seem reasonable to me to guess that they might have some kind of spirit communication matrix through which they send information and maybe even move physically. Not sure about that second thing. One more big picture that's a little more physical, but still kind of in the spirit space. You do get a lot of reporting from people who go to spirit realms or have near-death experiences or go out of body and experience the nature of reality in a different way, that at some level of that spiritual experience, time changes. And it may be possible for a consciousness to move from the 3 and 4 dimensional regular time world that we mostly occupy to a 5th dimensional plane on which time is a sphere that you can move around. So there could be very strange time stuff going on at the spiritual plane. I've just heard that enough that I think it might be true. And also, if precognition is real and we have some strong evidence that some version of precognition is real, then the future must be real enough for that precognition to work. So that implies that there is some kind of brick universe situation in which the future exists already, even if you haven't seen it yet. And then maybe there are quantum fluctuations that allow us all to collectively collapse the future into one waveform or another. I don't know how to factor free will into this. I'm mostly a free will skeptic, but I will say I've heard a lot of people in the spirit space say that at the level of spirit, free will is actually really important and does exist. And I don't know how to reconcile that. So I don't know what I think about free will at the spirit level. On the physical level, I find it really hard to understand how we could make an argument that we have it. But I do think that on a personal note, it makes sense to live your life as though you do have radical agency, and also related, it makes sense to be kind to others by imagining or recognizing that they don't have very much agency. So treat yourself as though you have high agency, treat other people as though they don't have very much agency, and that will help you forgive them while taking more responsibility for yourself. That's a total side note, but it's really good advice, mostly not from me. Okay, so back to the realm of the physical and okay, I was going to say real, but the physical and the more immediately knowable, say, I think we are reverse engineering the craft of these advanced beings. I think we clearly have some, it seems extremely likely based on a whole bunch of different stories that we have some of this tech. We've been recovering it. We're working really hard to reverse engineer it. And when I say we, I mean advanced nations of the world. I would say at least the United States, China, and Russia. There might be some other nations, but I don't have any evidence to suggest that there are other nations involved with that. But I think at least US, China, and Russia are working on reverse engineering programs. They're trying to build some of this tech. We definitely have some of the tech. I think it's likely that China has some of the tech, and I think we have evidence that Russia was working on this, thanks to the testimony from George Knapp, who submitted his research into the congressional record. So there's strong evidence of that. Along those lines, I think there's also evidence that we've made progress. And although we haven't cracked the code completely, because I think if we had, we would have widespread applications for this technology, although not necessarily, because we could be keeping it in a very careful box for special rare emergency military applications. But I think there's strong evidence that we humans have successfully reverse engineered some of this stuff. It seems likely that the US has done this. I don't know if they got there first, but it's starting to likewise seem likely that China has also cracked some of this code and may have some reverse engineered UAP. So some of the UAP that shut down Air Force bases in the United States toward the end of 2024, for example, they might have been non-human UAP, but they could have been Chinese UAP that were reverse engineered from alien UAP. And this is like, this is a pretty wild situation. If this is the case, if China and Russia and the United States all have tech like this, or even if just 2 out of those 3 have tech like this, then the behind the scenes of the military, like the deep behind the scenes, is a wild west right now, because that means we're all spying on each other in ways that we used to think were impossible. It also means that we have to totally rethink our nuclear deterrence strategy, and that could be a big part of why we're not talking about it. But I've gone into that in other episodes, so not going any further there. I have another bombshell speculation in this area, though, which is I think there's decent evidence that we, as in humans, and I don't have evidence of this for other countries, but within the US, there are a bunch of stories about working together with alien intelligences, working with some non-human intelligences that have made contact, landed here, established some kind of rules-based procedure with humans, established some kind of working relationship, and even established some sort of like shared military practices with regard to preparing for potential eventualities involving other kinds of beings related to this, if they are connected to human military operations. That suggests that they, as in the non-human intelligences, might be actively discouraging disclosure. They could be telling, say, the military and intelligence folks that they work with, you can't disclose because bad things would happen, or they could be threatening them by saying, if you disclose, we will do bad things. That could be a strong reason for the insane amount of secrecy that we've seen about this in the last 80 years. I think we have strong evidence in the form of dozens, if not hundreds, of weird Men in Black stories that aliens or hybrid entities, just non-human intelligences of some kind, have actively been involved in attempting to discourage people from disseminating information about non-human intelligence. I would point you to, there's an episode about whales in the Encounters series. Wales is in the country. It's in the United Kingdom. There's a good Men in Black story there about 2 really weird dudes who come to a hotel to look for somebody who had an encounter and try to discourage them from talking about it. I've also heard that the Calvine photo gentlemen who took that picture of that famous diamond UFO were heavily discouraged from discussing that, possibly by Men in Black appearances. If you're not familiar, these guys tend to be like nearly identical, tend to be 2 of them. They tend to be weird, like they maybe don't blink, or they do things like use really like archaic language or just phrases that don't really make sense in our contemporary vernacular. They used to drive one kind of car really reliably, but then that became kind of a meme, and people say maybe now they don't. But the point is that they pop up again and again, and they don't seem human. So that seems to suggest that some kind of non-human intelligence who are acting like they are human, which means they can pass, which means they're probably genetically close enough to us to get some of that right, or they have really good cloaking technology. They're actively involved in suppressing information about this situation. They're managing disclosure, and they could be doing that behind the scenes if they are collaborating with us militarily. Like maybe you heard this interview this year, I think it was on American Alchemy, about a gentleman who was recruited to do basically psychic training, and his whole military role, his like secret military role, was about interpreting psychic messages and relating to UFO flying creatures in some kind of military capacity to prepare potentially for some sort of event. He never felt like he knew what it was. That could all be BS. It could be silly. That could be made up, but it does seem like there's a bunch of smoke about these creatures meeting with humans. I'm going to just guess. I would say this is a low probability, but it feels weird, but just gut check guess. I do think they're probably talking to us on the behind the scenes level. I think there might be some interaction going on that's not just, hey, we found this craft and the biologics and we're examining it. I think it's possible that we're doing more than that. I'm sorry, you can hear it's so hard for me to just say what I think, and that's why this is an act of great courage and boldness to be sharing what I think. And I'm almost done, but along these lines, it stands to reason that if we are working with them in some military capacity, that we may be working with them because there are some bad actors out there. I don't just mean the kinds in Christmas movies on Netflix. I mean people who want to maybe hurt us or dominate Earth in some dangerous way or dominate our alien pals. It's reasonable to expect that species have had disagreements and even wars from time to time. There's a really great wood cutting from Nuremberg in like 1593, I forget the exact year, 1563 maybe, of what seemed like a celestial battle between a bunch of rods and cones and spheres and bars in the sky. And it was a huge celestial event in Nuremberg. Recommend looking it up. It's a really cool image. That could have been a dogfight, and it could relate to an ongoing tension between two alien species or more. And if that's true, if somebody's been upgrading us, uplifting humans, and also at war with another species, it stands to reason that they might be warning us and also preparing us and maybe like recruiting humans as potential members of an army to confront or oppose their foes historically. So it's possible they're sort of like organically developing our military capacities to move toward that kind of agenda. And maybe that would go hand in hand with them working with us to recruit, I don't know, psychic Air Force guys to figure out how to team up so that we can take on their enemies. That may be part of the picture. And so to that point, it could be that this threat narrative about some UFOs being dangerous could be that that's real, but doesn't apply to all aliens. Maybe most of the alien beings who are on Earth and operating regularly here are pretty chill. Maybe most of them are either tourists or they're the sort of gardener race that's been involved in our evolution, or they're some other kind of benign presence, but some of them might be malicious. Some of them have apparently killed or hurt people, or there are people who have been taken and never come back. There are animals who've been slaughtered en masse. There could be bad things here, and there could be worse things coming. So it's possible that some of these creatures that we like, or who at least have not tried to wipe us out, are preparing us to defend ourselves against those other beings, either just because they are looking out for our best interests and they want us to stay free, or because they're recruiting us to serve as some military effort to confront their foes. I guess I'll leave on one more idea, which is I think the cat is coming out of the bag. I don't think it's like about to spill all over the floor like a bunch of marbles. The marble cats are not necessarily going to roll across the kitchen floor in the next 6 months, but I think the last year has been pretty wild looking back on it, actually. And certainly the last 10 years has been very interesting with regard to this subject. And I think we're getting to a point where lots of people are coming out and telling their stories. Those stories are pretty weird. I think more people are interested now. I think that's going to click up another 10% over the course of the next year. I think we're getting there. I think we're getting to a point where we're going to recognize that this is real and onboard it. And we're going to have some big existential questions to answer about the whole nature of reality and our relationship to these beings. And then we're going to have some big societal decisions to make about what our posture wants to be going forward. Do we want to be part of a military operation with a species we don't know? Is that a necessary imperative for our own self-defense, or is it kind of a messy, scary, dangerous thing to get into? I think we could debate the merits of that another time, but we've done a really good, courageous, brutal, beautiful rundown here. And I feel wild for talking about all of this. My throat chakra's all jacked up because I'm feeling way out on a limb. So I'm going to go drink some water and think about what I've done. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you tear me apart in the comments, tell me why I've got it all wrong, or send me some applause emojis and donate on Patreon. Thank you guys so much. It's been a wonderful year. I hope you have a healthy, happy holiday, even if you're just spending joyous time with yourself or with me, like we're both doing tonight. This has been a pleasure and joy, and I wish you the best. Talk to you later. Stay healthy. Bye. And that's the show. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying it, please like and subscribe and share this with people who you think might like it. You could also directly support us at patreon.com/WTUFO for $1 a month. We do some chatting in there, and you can propose questions for future episodes. You could also check out spacefair.etsy.com. That's our company's main merch site where you could support us commercially and pick up some cool gear. Thank you again for listening. Hope you have a lovely day.